In this problem, we see the brightness of the bulb in the two circuits just after clip B is connected to complete the circuit. So the brightness of the bulb, once this circuit, like before clip B, before this was put on, there was no brightness, right? It was done. I mean, ultimately, if we go back to the beginning of the time of this situation, this bulb was put in the circuit, the capacitor was put in, and it was turned on. The bulb lit up, and then it dimmed out slowly, right? Just think of the clicker, the sound of the clicker, the frequency of the clicks is the brightness of the bulb. As the current diminishes, the bulb gets dim. Then you connect this B, boom, the bulb lights up again, and then it dims out again. Does this make sense? Okay. If they're, are they the same capacitors? Yeah. Since they're both identical, well, actually, this will actually come something later, but, well, I'm not going to worry about that. Just understand that mechanism. Then for part B, compare how long the bulbs in the two circuits glow once clip B is connected. Briefly explain. Clip B. Clip B. Does that just mean put on the battery? Yeah, okay. Well, we've discussed that clearly. That's fine. Now, here's something interesting. Okay? Here's something interesting. It's a tough question, so see if you can hang with me here. We have this situation where the light is out. This has been on for a long time. So we can assume that both of these capacitors are fully charged. This light is out. There's no light. It's not burnout, it's just not lit up. If I take a wire and do this and bypass the battery, once I close this switch, click, and I make this light connected to both of these two capacitors without the battery, anybody have an idea what's going to happen? Sorry? Okay, wow, hey, some good kind of understanding there. And the question is, why?
Because the charges filled up by the capacitor goes back into the bulb.
Perfect, sweet. Okay, so what happened over time when this thing was being charged up, right? Didn't we get a bunch of pluses over here and a bunch of minuses over here? Does that make sense to everyone? Why do they stay there? Right? The battery pushed the charges on there. Why don't the charges come off? Because the battery creates a gradient which keeps them shoved onto the capacitor. Now, if I just get rid of this completely, like this, just get rid of that, can they come off? No, because there's nowhere to go. They can't see anything. But if I give them this wire that bypasses the battery so they don't see the battery anymore, then what does this plus actually see through this wire? Yeah, it sees the negative. So there will be a giant rush, a huge rush, woof, of current through there. Okay? That is a camera flash. Okay, anybody here ever used a disposable camera? What sound does it make when you're trying to charge up the flash? Yeah, you know that whoop, that thing. Have you ever used, if you've used a disposable camera with a flash, you have to hold a button in to charge up the flash. Because what you're doing is you're putting the battery connected to the capacitor. Now, when that battery is connected to the capacitors, the current is very low, so it doesn't light up this bulb, but it builds up these capacitors. Then, when you close this switch, it disconnects the battery, and there's a giant current because capacitors can give their charge very fast, like instantly. A battery gives a little charge over a long time. Gives a little bit of energy over a long time. That's the whole point. A capacitor gives all of its charge right away. And then that makes that flash go off. So you were saying, are capacitors useful? Yes. Can you think of another instance where you need to deliver a large chunk of electricity at one time? You're laughing. Why? What is it? Yeah, it's a taser. Okay, this is how you make a taser. You have, well, you need a battery. You need something called a step-up transformer. We'll learn that later. That turns the 9 volts or 3 or 5 or 6 volts of the battery. 5? There's no 5. Yeah, maybe like 3, 6, or 9 volts of the battery. Turns it up to like 30, 40, or 100,000 volts. And then those 100,000 volts are stored on capacitors. That way, when you put it on somebody and boom, pull the trigger, zoop, they get 100,000 volts all at once. And that's highly entertaining to watch. It's funny, when I was in college, we had a house mom, like a cook, and she would come to the house every day and cook food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner or whatever. And then her name was Esther. And she was this lady from like Watts. And she was like bigger than life. She was so funny. And then one of our guys kept going in the kitchen and stealing food and eating it while she was cooking. And she was getting mad. She says, "You better get out of my kitchen!" You know, and all this stuff. And he's like, "Ooh, what are you gonna do? Beat me up?" And he grabs some food and he's like marching out of the kitchen, like acting all big. And she reaches into her purse and pulls out her stun gun and sticks it right on his butt. It was so funny. Oh my god. Like he had food in his mouth, and he's like, he like spit it out, and he's like foaming at the mouth. It was pretty funny. I'd never seen him, and he landed like on the table while I'm eating breakfast. So he's like, and he's like, and he like fell on the floor. He was so mad. He wanted her fired, like, "I want her fired right now." We're like, "Shut up." Wow, I think it's recording all of that. Awesome. But William's question earlier was, why are capacitors good? Because they can deliver a charge all at once, right? And that works in flashes, it works in tasers. It's also important in electric cars, because if you need to accelerate, the battery can't just automatically deliver a huge amount of juice. So you usually, in a good electric cars, you have a capacitor bank. And then you charge up that capacitor bank, and when you need to accelerate, instead of pulling from the battery, it pulls from the capacitors. And then whoosh, you get like this extra big current that makes your motor go faster. And then you haven't destroyed your batteries. All right? Well, that's good enough for it.